Hello, this is the Stories Beside channel. I release videos every day for you. Subscribe and click the bell. The landlady ran her finger along the shelf. I knew it. You don't clean here at all. At least you take out the trash. Adriana was embarrassed. She was a housekeeper for a very wealthy family, so she had neither the energy nor the time to clean her rented apartment. She only slept in a small studio apartment on the outskirts of Washington, D.C., and spent the day at work in a luxurious house, which was located in an upscale cottage community on the shores of the lake. Adriana took several transfers to get there. It took her several hours every day to get there by public transportation. "And how do you explain that the neighbors complain about you?" asked the landlady. "I don't know," answered Adriana quietly. "Our neighbor is of an age. It's not like she's just going to talk shit about you. She said you were noisy after 11 o'clock at night. That was one time. Were you having a party here?" the landlady asked. "No, the shelf broke. I asked someone I knew to fix it. You could have done it at night. I didn't think I was disturbing anyone," Adriana said regretfully. "You wouldn't kick me out for that." The landlady was aroused. "I have been patient for a long time, but the neighbor is always complaining about you, and you pay the money late. This month, like last month, I haven't received a cent yet. I'll pay next week," Adriana promised. "It's a fresh story. My employers are away on vacation. When they come back, they'll pay me right away." "What do you do for a living?" The landlady inquired about me as a housekeeper. "I come and cook for a couple of their son." "That's a housekeeper. So you leave the same mess at their place too." "They never complain about me. I'll tell you what. Either you wire me 2 months' rent today, or I'll take your keys tomorrow," the landlady decisively declared. "But I can't make it today," begging. Adriana looked at her. "Can I pay you at the end of the month?" "My trust in you is exhausted," sternly ended the woman. I took my shawl and headed for the exit. "But before that, I've been paying my dues for almost a year. Maybe you've been fired already. How do I know all your problems?" "No, I still work there. Would you like to see my employment contract?" Desperate, Adriana asked. "I don't want your contract. I need the money, and I don't want the neighbors to complain. And before you leave, please tidy up the apartment. I've never seen such a layer of dust. Don't evict me. I'm begging you. I have nowhere to go," Adriana begged. "Sweetheart, you hope that I'll let you live here for free. The neighbors say you're always bringing men around, and I don't want them to turn my apartment into a brothel." "What kind of men? How should I know?" "They just say that they come here quite often." The landlady stood in front of the mirror leisurely, put on a handkerchief, and painted her lips with scarlet lipstick. "I don't like to hear it. I've only had a friend visit me once. If it was just once, no one would accuse you. And once a friend from out of town came to visit me. He didn't have a place to sleep in Washington," Adriana remembered. "See, the neighbors don't talk for nothing. You can also use my apartment as a free hotel for visitors. I told you, it's money by the end of the day or you leave. This conversation is over." The landlady slammed the door behind her. Adriana stood in the hallway, tears streaming down her cheeks. She had no one she knew in Washington, D.C., who could lend her that much money until tonight. She didn't want to go back to her small town and admit that she hadn't succeeded in conquering the capital. Adriana tried to call the landlord and landlady she worked for as a housekeeper, but they were overseas. Their phone didn't answer. She wrote them a message asking them to send her salary, but there was little hope that they would read it. Before they left, they immediately warned that they would not be available for 2 weeks. Adriana waited a couple of hours, but the message remained unanswered. There was nothing to do. Adriana began packing and getting ready to move. She had arranged to spend a few days. Betty was also renting a place at her friend's house, but she didn't have such a fierce landlady. "Do you need to find a guy with an apartment?" the friend declared as she opened the door. "And I'm very happy to see you." She put her bags in the hallway. "Where did you get so much junk?" I don't have a 3-bedroom apartment, by the way. Leave it in the hallway. You have a balcony. Let's put it there. Where am I gonna put my stuff? Betty grinned. Adriana, no offense, but you can stay with me for a week at most. Then my boyfriend will come. We decided to live together. Adriana sighed. I see. Congratulations. The girls set the table, opened a bottle of inexpensive wine, and canned food for an appetizer. As they drank a little and relaxed, Adriana forgot all her problems. She enjoyed chatting with her best friend and not thinking about anything. Betty, however, got her busy with life planning. How about looking for a better paying job? Adriana asked. What kind, for example? With a chuckle, clarified Adriana. Why are you laughing? Do you know how much money you can make in Washington? That's if you have an education. Education is last century. Betty waved her off. It's all about knowing the right people. I'm a wreck about that too. So are you doing anything about it? Do you meet anyone? When was the last time you were on a date? Back when you lived in Vologda. Adriana wondered. Forget about those guys. They can't help you. What they have is, at best, an apartment in the provinces or a country house, left over from your grandmother. You shouldn't say that. They're simpler than the Washington boys. That's not what I'm talking about. You need to find a rich man with an apartment. I'm not saying you have to fall in love with him. Are you suggesting that I sell myself? Oh, you're not even listening to me. Just meet someone. You're planning a family anyway, aren't you? Yes, but I'd like to marry for love. Adriana lowered her gaze. In that case, you should have stayed in your little town. Betty poured another glass of wine, choked her friend, and drank hers in a gulp. They ate their sprats in silence for a while, putting them on garlic-smeared black bread. Good sitting. Blissfully, Adriana stretched out. I would have liked to sit in the Maldives and drink not this cheap wine. I'd like to drink real Italian. You're too obsessed with money. Who isn't? Betty asked. I am. Are you saying you don't care about money at all? Imagine that. Adriana shrugged. But I'll argue with you. If you had money, you wouldn't be sitting with me now, but in your apartment. And if you had more money, you'd buy your own place in downtown Washington, D.C., and not depend on any landlady. I don't have that kind of money, and I can't have it. Look, Betty sat down closer to her friend. I met S the other day, a man in a BMW. Where did you find him? I had to make a small sacrifice. I was standing in a crosswalk and saw a nice, expensive car approaching. So I pretended I didn't see the light and walked right into it. Are you crazy? Shrieked Adriana. Why? But he immediately jumped out to see if he hit me. He was so worried. He turned out to be young and very handsome. He and I exchanged numbers. I lied about going to the hospital and my leg hurting. We started talking to each other word for word. And now we're having dinner tonight. Oh, you're really something. Sincerely admired Adriana. I could never do that. I'll teach you. Don't. I'm very different, I know you well. You're so talented. You work hard. And what a great look you have. But you don't use any of it. Betty's gone. How am I supposed to use it? Do you want me to ask that man in the BMW if he has a rich friend? Don't. Adriana got scared. I'm shy. Then I'll introduce you to this one. I wanted to take him for myself. But you're in a situation where you obviously needed more. What do you mean? You went under the wheel for him. Even if I really wanted to meet him, I wouldn't take him away from you. Shit. Betty took the receipt out of the bag and looked at it carefully. I thought we'd spend less. Now we'll have to walk to work again. I don't have a bus card, and there's only money left for food. I'm sorry. I can't lend you any. It's time to end this misery. Listen to me. From now on, you and I have a plan to marry a rich man. Looking into her friend's eyes, Betty declared. Okay, Adriana gave in. Let's swear right now that we will do our best to meet and charm some millionaire. I swear, said Adriana and supported her friend's idea. No more living in poverty. And I swear. 2 weeks later, the host and hostess returned home. Adriana had done a general cleaning and cooked dinner for their arrival, but they still weren't happy. We told them to wash the windows twice a week in summer, reprimanded Vanessa. I washed them, answered Adriana. So you washed them before it rained. Why am I still seeing streaks? While you were away, it rained every day. I can wash them again tonight. That goes without saying, of course, not tonight, but right now. In a lovely tone, Vanessa declared and turned to her husband. I feel like we haven't had a vacation at all. This flight wore me out. I even got some sleep, said her husband, Michael. And we chose that hotel for nothing. It was so far from the center that my feet still hurt. That's true. For that kind of money, they could have arranged transportation, agreed. The man nodded. We should write a bad review. Vanessa picked up her laptop. Do you remember what the hotel was called? I have something like the Golden Lily or something like that written down somewhere. After all these days, we don't even remember the name of the hotel. I think that already says a lot. Adriana walked past them with a bucket of water. She began washing the windows on the second floor, where Ethan, the owner's son, was staying. The guy was just there, hanging out on his phone. I'm sorry, am I interrupting? Noticing him, Adriana apologized. What did you want? Ethan looked away from the phone screen. Vanessa asked me to clean the windows. They're supposed to be clean. He looked at her perplexed. I thought so too. Adriana chuckled, but Vanessa asked him to do it again. Maybe you can do it later. I don't want to leave the room. I'm texting with a friend, Ethan said. I can come back later. You don't have to come in at all. The window looks clean. I'll tell my parents you washed it. Better not do that. What if they find out it's a lie and Adriana gets worried? And what will they punish you for? They may deprive me of a part of my salary, will be displeased, or even fire me, she sighed. They won't. Mama hates cleaning and cooking until she finds another housekeeper. It will be a long time before she finds another housekeeper. I wouldn't want to cheat them anyway. Okay, so she's honest. Ethan grinned, trying not to lie to people. How's that working out for you? Adriana nodded most of the time. You mean you've never lied to anyone at all? There were a couple of times, she remembered, but I was just a little girl then. It was unintentional. I didn't want to deceive anyone. I think that if people stopped lying to each other, life would be a lot easier. I'm sorry, Ethan said, and went back to the phone. What you're saying is probably very important, but my friend and I are playing an online game. Then I'll come back later. Adriana closed the door of the room and headed next door. As soon as she opened the window, she heard a shout from the landlady on the first floor. Adriana, what the hell is this? The girl immediately rushed out of her seat and ran swiftly down the stairs. She could not even guess what this time displeased the mistress. Why have my flowers wilted? Vanessa pointed to the rose bushes. Your gardener has taken time off. Exactly. And you knew that. Is it hard for you to water the bushes? It's not a problem, but it's not my job. I've got enough to do around the house to replace the gardener. God, why do we need 3 servants if they can't take care of a rosebush? Vanessa begged me to get the gardener. And what will he do with that bush? It can only be buried. There's nothing left to save. Maybe he'll dig it up and replant it. I just don't know anything about it. Adriana continued to make excuses. It's your fault. That it wilted. My fault? Yes, the gardener said he warned you about taking care of the plants. This month I will withhold part of your wages as a fine. The landlady declared menacingly. That's not the only thing Adriana was afraid of. Please, I just moved into a new apartment and I need to pay several months in advance. Then who should I charge for the cost of the bush? But it's not my fault. Whose fault is it? I don't know. Adriana gave in to the pressure of the woman and cried. It was all the gardener's fault. Well, here we go. It may work on young Maeve boys, but you're not going to pacify me with your tears. You're fined $200. I'll give you your paycheck at the end of the week. Despite the girl's protests and tears, Vanessa did not back down. She was the principal of a private school and was used to any display of emotion. She had to work with children, and she also had to run the business and keep an eye on the financial side at the same time. Over the many years of such work, she had become simply impenetrable, and she certainly didn't remember the times when she had to pay her own rent and live in a room in a communal apartment. When she turned 20, she married the son of wealthy parents and the heir to their family business. She hasn't had a problem with money since then. And now it seemed to her that anyone could become a millionaire if only they worked hard enough. She couldn't stand those who breed ignorant people instead of doing her bidding. She couldn't put herself in Adriana's shoes to remember what it was like to be evicted from your apartment for non-payment, or your boss humiliating you. Adriana didn't forget the vow she'd made to her friend. The girl started visiting an online dating site. She started corresponding there with a very nice man. He told her that he owned a large business and that he had properties in different countries, and he was going to be in Washington, D.C. soon. He would be here literally for a few days. They decided to seize the moment and go on a date. They met outside the entrance of the cafe. Adriana did not really like this man because he was a few years older than in the picture she had seen on the website. He immediately took a liking to her. "I am very glad to meet you." He gallantly gave her a hand and helped her into the cafe. I also responded out of politeness. "Let's sit at a table near the window so I can keep an eye on my car. Is this your white Mercedes?" "No, I came in a Hyundai today, but I have several cars in Washington," said Liam. "I'll just have a coffee," said Adriana, looking at the menu. "The prices here are so crazy." "That's all right. Take whatever you want. Then I'll take a coffee and a pastry," the girl decided, "and I'll have dinner." Liam called the waiter over to him and dictated his order. "You are even more beautiful than in the picture. Thank you very much. What do you do?" Adriana answered evasively with many things. She remembered how her friend had taught her to talk to rich men. Betty said that under no circumstances should you talk about working as a servant. In her opinion, a woman should either have a prestigious profession or she should stay at home and be a housewife when she got a rich husband. "Do you work?" "Yes, but only for myself." Adriana lied as best she could. "And by whom, if it's not a secret?" "Well, me. I have my own little business." "That's how." "I have a lot of respect for girls who make their own living," Liam said, "and I've got a little factory, as you know. My dad left it to me, and I run it now. It must be awfully hard. If you have a decent education, it's easy. By the way, I went to university in London, and then I studied in America for a while." "Wow, where did you study?" "I also studied in London," Adriana said. A friend had taught her to lie about her education too. Although Adriana didn't like that approach to dating, she was determined to have a relationship with a rich man by all means. "So you speak English?" "Yes, but not very well." "How then did you study in England?" Liam asked. "It was a long time ago. I only spent 1 year there, and I hadn't practiced English for a long time. My dad got sick, and I had to go back home." Adriana continued to lie. In fact, the girl was an orphan and spent her childhood in an orphanage her father never saw. Her mother died when the girl was 7 years old. It is very noble of you to sacrifice your education for the well-being of your own person. The waiter brought the order, and Liam greedily gorged himself on the soup. Adriana tried to drink her coffee as elegantly as possible and pretend she didn't want any cake at all. In fact, she hadn't had time for dinner, and she hadn't bought sweets in a long time. "I'm sorry I got so carried away with the food," the man said. "Today was a very important meeting with foreign partners. I hardly ate anything all day." "I understand. Don't be shy." Liam took a few minutes to finish his first and moved on to the salad. She looked at him and thought there was a lot about him that wasn't pleasant. She imagined how Liam would come home every day, eating the dinner she had made, and then they would have to go to bed together. She grimaced at such fantasies. "It's a good thing you and I had time to meet in Washington," Liam said, when he finished his meal. "When you leave, you have to fly to Paris tomorrow on business for my firm." "I've never been to Paris," Adriana said dreamily. But then she realized that, according to her legend, she should have been there. "I mean, I haven't been to Paris in a long time." That's what I understood. "I never would have believed you'd never been there." They sat for about half an hour and talked about everything. Adriana told him about her non-existent life, and then listened to his stories with rapt attention. On the one hand, she did not like the man, because it was difficult to call him an intellectual or a gentleman. But on the other hand, judging by his stories, he had good money. Adriana made a decision to turn off all her feelings for that evening and think only of the fact that she needed to pay the rent. When they decided it was time to go home, Liam called for the waiter. "Bring us a separate bill, please," suddenly he said. Adriana did not expect this turn of events. She frantically began to remember how much money she had with her. "I have nothing against it." The girl pretended like everything was all right, although she didn't really like the situation. When the waiter arrived, she had to take out all her money to pay for the coffee and cake. The prices here were cosmic for the amount she spent. She could have shopped at the store for 3 days. After such a date, the girl was left with an unpleasant aftertaste. When they went outside, she happily breathed in the fresh air and tried not to think about the money she had just spent. "Will you take me to the subway?" asked Adriana. "I was walking to the subway myself." "Let's go together," Liam suddenly suggested. "I thought you said you were taking the car today." "Yes, I was confused. I don't have a car in Washington, except in Paris and London." "But you said you had several cars in Washington." "I remember what you said about the Mercedes with suspicion," Adriana reminded me. "So I was confused." Suddenly, she realized that she wasn't the only one acting out the comedy this evening. Liam turned out to be the simplest guy who lived in Washington and rode the subway. She took a closer look at him and felt even more repulsed. If he had been rich, she would have endured it and gone on one more date with him. But she could not bring herself to marry him. She mentally thanked fate that she wouldn't have to see him again. "I'll probably take the bus," Adriana said. "That's too bad. I thought you and I could talk some more on the way to the subway." Liam didn't seem to suspect anything. "Maybe we'll talk next time. I was thinking I really liked you. For your sake, I can postpone my trip to Paris. Maybe we could meet tomorrow." The man suggested and took a step toward Adriana. "I already have plans for tomorrow." She bounced away from him. "That's too bad. Then I'll meet you when I get back to Washington. I'll text you in advance when that is, but I'll probably be gone for a while. I like you very much. I want to see you again." He walked over to Adriana again and tried to hug her. "There is no hurry. Work comes first after all. And here is my bus," said the girl, and ran off before Liam made an attempt to kiss her. Adriana was almost finished with the general cleaning. All she had to do was wash the dishes and put the kitchen table in order. Suddenly, she heard someone enter the house. It was strange, because the owners were at work and their son was at school. She went out into the hallway to see who it was. "Hi," Ethan said. "Are you back already? I thought you had classes at the university until the evening. I decided to leave early today." "It's good to serve lunch," Adriana suggested. "Go ahead." Ethan made his way to his room to change. Adriana, meanwhile, took a steaming lasagna out of the oven. "Sit down and eat with me," the boy suggested. "I still have some work to finish. It's kind of embarrassing." The girl was embarrassed. What's uncomfortable about it? Is it uncomfortable to sit at the same table with me? No, of course, that's not what I meant. You misunderstood me. Adriana started to make excuses, but Ethan stopped her. "Come on, sit down and rest." He took her by the arm. Adriana sank down on the chair beside him, lay down for herself too. "Good. Now that's another thing. Tell me, do you have a young man?" Ethan suddenly asked. "What do you mean?" Adriana looked up in surprise at the young man literally. Are you dating anyone? No. Why do you ask? You're so pretty. I've had my eye on you for a long time. You have? Actually, I haven't dated for a long time. But still, how can we have anything? Let's start by talking on a first-name basis, the young man suggested and put his hand on the girl's arm. Come on. Adriana was embarrassed to the extreme. You have very beautiful eyes. I can't imagine how a girl with those eyes could still be free. You're very pretty too. Overcoming shyness, said Adriana. I immediately noticed you. You liked me. And when I came here on my first day of work, your parents greeted me and started explaining to me what to clean and where the tools were. And you came out of your room. I immediately thought you had chubby lips like your mom. Mom's pretty, so I'll take that as a compliment. How would you feel about you and me starting to date? Adriana asked back with great surprise. And how would your parents feel about you dating a housekeeper? My personal life is none of their business. Let them take it as they want. And I'll marry you decisively if I want to, Ethan said. Have you ever thought of getting married? Of course I have. How would you like me as a bridegroom? I could never have dreamed of such a beautiful husband, replied the girl with a silly smile. She had really liked Ethan for a long time, but she was afraid to admit it, even to herself. Now that he'd made the first move, she realized she'd been waiting for this the whole time she'd worked in this family. She had enjoyed cleaning his room, seeing him eat the dinner she had prepared. Every time he greeted her in the morning, her face would blush. Plus, Ethan was very rich. It was perfect. He could solve all her housing problems, but Adriana wouldn't have to make a deal with her conscience because she could definitely love him. Adriana already had pictures of their ideal family life flashing before her eyes. A big country house, 2 children, vacations abroad. She had even managed to try on his last name. So let's get married, Ethan suggested. But we know each other so little. So, it's one thing to date in secret from your parents. It's another thing if you marry me, Adriana explained. I'm tired of my parents constantly dictating what to do. If you want to know, they even found me a bride. It's Daddy's friend's daughter. They have a rich family. But I don't like this girl at all. Oh boy. I thought that such arranged marriages remained only in third world countries. Adriana laughed. But then she realized that Ethan was serious, and this was a problem for him. My parents are too fixated on raising me to be successful, the young man said. I understand. It's always better to follow the call of the heart. So are you willing to marry me again? Ethan asked. I don't even know. It's so sudden. She pondered the prospect, which both frightened and attracted her. Suddenly, she remembered the promise she had made to her friend and blurted it out. I accept. How happy am I? So am I. She moved closer to the young man and wanted to kiss him, but Ethan pulled away. Not now. Let's get ready for the wedding. I can't believe this is all actually happening stupidly. The girl laughed. Neither can I. Let's secretly prepare the whole ceremony. I'll invite my girlfriends. That would be wonderful. Call them straight to our house. Ethan agreed. Will you tell your parents, or will they find out when we get married? I'll tell them later, without thinking about it or talking to them about the wedding. I'll do it myself. What do you say? The young people heard someone open the front door and immediately went their separate ways. Adriana pretended to do the dishes and Ethan quickly ran off to his room. I can't believe how lucky you are, exclaimed Betty. The girls walked around the market looking for a wedding dress. Especially for this event, Adriana borrowed from everyone she could. She was sure she would marry once and for life, and she wanted to be a real princess in a puffy white dress. I couldn't believe it myself when he told me he'd liked me all along, Adriana said. Men can be very secretive. I thought that he despised me. He always looked down on me, as if I were a servant. Did everything happen like a Brazilian soap opera? God, I'm so jealous of you. He's cute, very cute, Adriana replied with a smile. And their house is beautiful, beautiful, and very big. Can you imagine? They just gave him a car for his birthday. It seems to me, all he has to do is ask, and his parents will buy everything he wants. And his inheritance is huge. Enviously, a friend remarked, "That's a cute dress. Let's try it on." The girls went into the bridal department. Adriana chose a few dresses and went to the changing room. She took turns coming out and showing them to Betty, and she evaluated them. After several examples, they finally chose a dress they both liked. It was a long, cool white dress that matched the bride's skin tone perfectly. All that was left was to choose a veil and shoes. Betty announced, "I barely had any money left. The dress is so long I can wear old beige shoes under it. You can't marry a millionaire in old shoes." All right. Betty took out her purse and gave her friend $60. "I'll do my part for your happiness too." "Thank you." Adriana was happy. Only this in debt will pay back when you become the wife of a wealthy heir. They went into the shoe department. She tried on all the white shoes and found the perfect pair for herself. Tired but happy girls went to Betty's to celebrate the upcoming wedding. She wouldn't have time to make the bachelorette party because they had scheduled the celebration for the next weekend's bachelorette party with a friend. It was the only thing she could afford, especially since such unforeseen expenses she wouldn't be able to cover right now. The friends were drinking tea and cookies and discussing the upcoming event. "At least show me his picture," Betty asked. "Then I'm very afraid of jinxing." "Do you think I have an evil eye?" "What are you?" Brushed Adriana off. "I know that you are a very good person." "Then show me," insisted Betty. "Okay." Adriana took out her phone and opened a gallery of pictures. "That's him. And those are his parents." "Are you kidding me?" "What's wrong?" "It's them," her friend exclaimed. "Do you know them? Are they the most famous lawyers in the country? There was even a documentary about them. I thought Vanessa was the school principal. Now there's been a big scandal." "What am I telling you?" "Look up old news on the internet and read with burning eyes," Betty told me. They were both helping a deputy get out of a very dirty case, and they succeeded, but half the country turned against them. Then Michael got involved in charity work and defended the innocent, and his wife changed her occupation. "Oh my God, I didn't know that." Adriana shook her head. "How unlucky can you be?" "Listen, I have a friend, a journalist. She will definitely be interested in this story. I'll send her your picture, and we'll quickly write a text." "What's that for?" "You what? Don't you want your wedding to be in all the papers? This Ethan you're marrying is one of the most eligible bachelors in America. Honestly, it would be nice if they wrote about us. Let's make up a note. It should be about him choosing a housekeeper to be his wife. People would definitely be interested in that. I don't want the whole country to know that I work as a maid." Adriana started arguing with her friend. "What does it matter what you work as? You're going to be Adriana's wife, Ethan. Everyone will look up to you." Betty pushed her laptop toward her and started typing. After a few minutes, she turned it on its screen. "To Adriana, you read the text and made your edits. All that's left is to attach your pictures. And I'm sending it to my friend." "Quite," said Betty. "She will definitely publish it." "Are you kidding?" "Yeah. She'll owe me the rest of her life for this exclusive." "God, I can't. To believe that this is happening to me." Adriana almost cried with happiness. What's to come? Adriana returned to her hometown for the first time since moving to Washington. She was ashamed to go back because she had never found her dream job, but had taken a job as a maid. She didn't want to tell even her friends about her job. She knew that rumors traveled through the small town in the blink of an eye, and all the friends and neighbors would know that she had moved to the capital, but had made no progress there. But now it was different. The girl walked the familiar streets with the feeling that in this life she had worked out better than ever. Painfully familiar houses seemed to her gray, dreary people, tortured by daily work. Adriana arrived to personally invite her friends to her wedding. First, she stopped by to see her best friend Kathy, who had already married her childhood friend and had a baby. "I'm so glad to see you," Kathy said. rocking her son in her arms. "Tell me about how you're doing." "Very well settled in Washington. Everything is going to it," with a mysterious smile answered Adriana. "Did you find a husband there?" "That's why I came. I thought you just missed me and decided to visit me," pouted Kathy. And that's what Adriana said too, hugging her friend. "But I wanted to invite you to my wedding." "No way." "I'm shocked myself. I still can't believe this is happening to me," Adriana said, smiling broadly. "And who is he with the money?" "You don't know him. I worked in his house when I first came to Washington. He and I started an affair. And now we're getting married." "I don't know," Kathy said with poorly concealed envy. "Will you and your husband be able to come?" "I really want to, but I don't know who to leave the baby with. My mother-in-law got sick and went to the hospital, and my father-in-law, I will not trust the child." Kathy pondered. "Then at least come alone." "At the very least I will. I'll wait for you very much and not hug my friend goodbye. You won't even stay for coffee with me. We should invite the other girls over. I thought you were just here for me." Kathy pretended to be offended. "You have a lot of girlfriends, don't you? You're going to be a bridesmaid. Okay then. Do you want to invite everyone we were with at the orphanage?" "No, I don't get along with everyone. But I'll invite some of the girls," she said. "You could just send them invitations. I wanted to tell them in person." "You have no idea what kind of man that is, do you? I am so happy to be married to him," Adriana said with a twinkle in her eye. "So tell me about him. Come and see for yourself." All right. Kathy waved her hand. "I'll even buy a dress just for the occasion." Well, what an honor. The girls hugged each other again, and Adriana went on to the rest of her friends. Almost all of them were married. Many had children, and they didn't know who to leave them with. According to Adriana's calculations, at least 10 people had to come to the celebration. A few more friends from Washington, D.C. would also be attending, since she and Ethan had decided not to have a big wedding, but just to celebrate at home. Even that number of guests could have been a problem. But Adriana wanted too much to share her joy with everyone. As she walked past the orphanage building, she peered through the windows in horror. Inside was still the same poverty, sad children sitting and minding their own business. The years in the orphanage were her worst wounded memories. After moving to Washington, she swore to herself that no matter how hard it was for her, she would never give up her child. Now, standing before those gray walls and dirty little windows, she thanked God for sending her such a suitor. Adriana inwardly scolded herself for being self-serving, for she had already imagined what neighborhood in Washington she would like to move to with her new husband. But the more she thought about it, the happier she was that her husband would have money. She was only now realizing all the stress she was feeling every day. Surviving alone in the big city. Bitterly, she acknowledged that Betty was right. Money in a relationship decides a lot, if not everything. The last item on her plan was to invite Kelly. This girl had always considered herself superior to the others, even though she all lived in the same orphanage. She thought that when she grew up, she was bound to become famous. When she was 18 years old, she became pregnant by her boyfriend. He married her, but their marriage did not last long. Now she was alone in raising her daughter, but her self-esteem has not become lower. She had little contact with Kelly in the past. This often hurt her feelings. Maliciously joked about the girl and told her that she would never make it. In Washington, she decided to invite her to the wedding, not because there was a strong friendship between them, but because she wanted to prove that she could achieve something. To marry a millionaire in front of Kelly, it seemed sufficient revenge for her years of humiliation. "Hi," Kelly said, seeing Adriana decide to come back. "No, I'm doing fine in Washington." Not in her usual voice, Adriana said, "I'm just here on vacation. Not only do I want to invite you to my wedding." Adriana handed her the invitations. Kelly flipped the piece of cardboard in her hands. She found herself a boyfriend in Washington, D.C. "He's my fiancé now, soon to be my husband. Can you make it?" "I'll try. I'd be very interested to see who you finally chose. Kelly didn't seem the least bit affected by the news of her marriage. I'll even bring you a present. The most important thing is that you come yourself. You don't have to buy any presents, sweetly, Adriana said. When she walked out of Kelly's house, she thought that this was the pinnacle of her life's success. Now everything was set. Adriana couldn't wait for all her friends to get together and see her in her white wedding dress. On the day in question, all the guests gathered at the gorgeous Ethan family home. Adriana stood in her wedding dress, wife's formal attire. Guests with bouquets of flowers in their hands waited for the groom to appear. Ethan's parents were not at home. They had gone away for the weekend to visit distant relatives. But Ethan explained that he had planned to have the celebration at home first and then go to the wedding bureau to sign. He wanted to put his parents in front of the fact when everything was ready. Adriana was fine with that. Adriana understood that a bride like her would cause disapproval. On the contrary, it was to her advantage to agree with her future husband and not to tell his parents anything. "What's taking him so long?" said Betty. She was standing next to Adriana, holding the bride's hand. "Maybe we should go check if something is wrong." Adriana got worried. "If you want, I'll go. It's about time we got started." But just as Betty was about to go check on Ethan, he came down from the second floor himself. "What's going on here?" Puzzled, asked the guy. The groom was dressed in housepants and slippers. He walked with a mug to the kitchen to pour himself some tea. When he saw the guests in his house, he feigned sincere surprise. In addition to Adriana's friends, his friends were also there, all dressed in black tuxedos. "Aren't you dressed yet?" Adriana asked in surprise. "Why should I be dressed?" "I am at home," Ethan answered. "What about the wedding?" "What wedding?" Ethan pretended to think about it, and then laughed. "Did you really think that I would marry you?" The orphan housekeeper, still not realizing it was a prank. Adriana couldn't believe what she was hearing. "I was joking." And when Ethan said that, his friends all started laughing at once. Turns out they'd put video cameras all over the house and were recording the prank. From the moment the guy proposed to Adriana, you had to believe it. Ethan was holding his stomach in laughter. "You tricked me into crying," Adriana exclaimed. "It's called a joke. You have no sense of humor at all. You cry some more here. It's very, very cruel." Adriana looked at all her guests and turned pale. She had never imagined that she would find herself in such a situation in front of all her friends. "It happens," dropped Kelly. "I'm going to go eat, at least." The guests walked silently out onto the lawn outside the house, where the table was set. They looked sympathetically at Adriana, who was crying incessantly on Betty's shoulder. "Why is he doing this to me?" shouted Adriana in tears. "He's just a very bad, cruel man." "It's not your fault, is it?" Betty stroked the girl on the head. "I'm ashamed to look people in the eye now." "That's all right. They'll talk about it and forget about it. Come on, you need a drink." Betty took the sobbing Adriana to the table and handed her a glass of champagne. "It'll make you feel better." "How can I work here now? I can't quit. I need the money." "His parents hired you, not him." "My parents won't know anything about this. I won't be able to see him every day." She wiped away her tears, only smearing her mascara harder. "Let me help you." Betty took a napkin from the table and helped her clean her face. Betty took the napkin from the table and helped her clean her face. "You're the only friend I have now." The others didn't say anything. It must have been embarrassing for them. It's understandable for them, too. "So, how are you feeling better?" Adriana nodded a little. "Then wait for me here, and I'll go. I'll talk to this idiot." Betty went up to the second floor and knocked on Ethan's room. "Who's there?" asked the guy. "Who is it?" "Open up. It's unlocked." "Do you have any idea what you've done?" asked Betty, menacingly, standing in front of Ethan. "What is it?" The young man got off his phone. "Hurt the girl." "I don't know what she was imagining," Ethan said. "Don't lie to me. You lied to her on purpose." "But why?" just to make fun of her with your buddies. Why not? It really was very funny and disgusting, smiled the frustrated bridegroom. What kind of a person are you? Go and apologize to her. She's in there right now crying because of you. Let her cry. I had nothing to do with it. She's the one who misunderstood me. Did she really think I'd marry her? She doesn't understand the difference between us. Having said that, Ethan went back to his phone. Well, I'll give you one in a minute. Betty smacked the phone in Ethan's hands as hard as she could, and it flew off into another corner of the room. Do you know how much it costs? You and your girlfriend never paid for it in your life. I don't give a damn about your phone. Go, I'm sorry. She still has to work here with Adriana. She can find another place if she wants. Ethan shrugged his shoulders indifferently. Housekeepers are needed everywhere. Who are you to tell her where to work? Do you know how hard it is to find a job? No, I don't. So, you don't know anything. I'm glad your wedding didn't happen. Adriana deserves so much better than you. Yeah, she's not even close to being my wife. There are thousands like her I could find. With a sneer, Ethan declared, You're just a bastard. She threw Betty and slammed the door as hard as she could out of the room. The guests slowly began to disperse. None of them came up to her or said a word of encouragement. This was partly because they themselves were uncomfortable with the situation. Each of Adriana's friends felt like a stranger in this rich house, and on the other hand, almost everyone who came at first was very jealous of the girl. Betty was the only one who supported Adriana. She too had not yet succeeded in finding a rich husband, and she knew how finicky men were about money. No one would want to experience the humiliation that Adriana experienced today. But the girl had no choice. She changed back into her work clothes and began to clean up. The owners returned home on Sunday. By this time, Adriana's condition had improved slightly. She realized that she didn't really like Ethan at all, despite his pleasant appearance. He was a bad man, and she had noticed the signs of his disgusting character before. It was just that on the eve of the wedding she had tried to fool herself that she had fallen in love with him. But now that feeling had evaporated. As soon as Vanessa entered the house, she immediately called for her son. Ethan, come down here immediately, ordered, she said. Are you back already? Asked the boy, coming down the stairs. We have, but apparently we missed the plane. Don't play dumb, shouted his mother. I don't know what you're talking about. What are you doing here? While we were gone? Nothing, Ethan shrugged. Went to school, did my homework. He tried to think, feverishly, how his parents could have known about his shenanigans. Had one of his friends blabbed? Then how do you explain it? His mother threw a newspaper at him. What's that? See for yourself. Right on the front page is your picture, and the headline, mother screamed. What is it? Ethan picked up the paper and saw his picture. The headline read that the son of famous lawyers had married his housekeeper. With surprise, he opened his mouth and remained standing still. How do you explain this? Strictly asked the mother. I don't know where it came from. Isn't that your picture? It is, but I wasn't going to do anything like that. It's just a rumor. Honestly, it's not true. Did you really want to marry this girl? No, I'm not crazy, Ethan exclaimed indignantly. Let's call her up and ask her. I know that such headlines don't appear out of thin air. My parents called for Adriana. Ethan began to get seriously nervous. He knew perfectly well how his mother felt about his adventures with girls and how much she cared about her image. There was no need to remember. Adriana, dressed in her apron and with the kernel in her hand, came up to Vanessa. Good evening. I have almost everything ready, said the girl. How do you explain this? The hostess shoved a newspaper under her nose. And how did it get there in bewilderment? Adriana asked. We will find out. Tell me the truth. Were you and my son going to get married? The woman asked very seriously. We were. Adriana nodded. No, we weren't. She is lying. Ethan interrupted her. Will you be quiet? We've heard your opinion. His mother interrupted him gruffly. So, are you two married now? No. Adriana answered, her eyes downcast. Well, thank goodness we didn't. So we got home in time, and you have not done anything stupid, Vanessa said with relief. But it's not the kind of news that's going to get us into trouble. Come on, no one reads the papers these days. Ethan shrugged and was about to leave for his room. Do you think so? None of my friends would ever find out. And we got the news from your dad's assistant. By the way, Vanessa said, we bought the paper ourselves afterwards. I didn't mean anything by it. It was just me and the boys playing a joke. And Adriana took it seriously. So there was talk of a wedding after all. The mother clarified. Yes, a joke. It was very funny. And now I have to deal with it all. The woman threw the newspaper on the floor. I'm sorry, Mom. Are you grounded? No, not that. We have a graduation coming up. I have to go. You're not going to lock me up for some joke. That's exactly what I'm going to do. Vanessa said, give me your phone. Mom, don't. I said give the phone to me. Ethan irritably handed her his cell phone. Dad and I will try to handle this situation for now, and then we'll think about what your punishment will be. The parents, with very serious and concerned faces, went to their father's office. There they locked themselves in and made some calls until the evening. When they came out, they looked just as tense. It turned out that a journalist, a friend of Betty's, had managed to send the news to all the major publications. Now it was very difficult to remove it from the media. A lot of people managed to read it and attacked the newsroom with their letters and calls. Even as very good lawyers, the parents could do nothing about the situation. It was useless to sue the publisher. So was publishing a retraction. They had already damaged their reputation so badly in the past that public opinion would still side with the poor housekeeper. All the parents could do was punish their negligent son and put him under house arrest. A few days passed, and he was allowed to go out for a walk. The young man went to meet Christina, the daughter of his mother's friend. Vanessa dreamed that they would form a couple. Then their families could combine their businesses and thus form another lucrative alliance. However, they underestimated the journalists and public interest in the wedding. Ethan sat with Christina in a restaurant, enjoying his newfound freedom. The girl did not look sad, so she wasn't up to speed on all the fuss with the newspaper articles to find out. Ethan asked her a few leading questions just in case and made sure she didn't read the papers. Then he relaxed and finally exhaled. Why don't you invite me to your home? Christina asked. She liked Ethan very much, and she fully approved of her mother's idea to bring them together. But for the young man himself, Christina was unattractive. He was more likely to be friends with her than to build a real relationship. My parents are at home. I would have talked to them at the same time, the girl said. I had a fight with them about what? We'd better not discuss it. Ethan tried to move off the dangerous subject. It's a family thing, I understand. I have these arguments with my parents, sometimes too, and they're grown-ups, but they don't understand a lot of things. I have to explain them even the most basic things. Christina complained. It's different for you. At that moment, Ethan saw a crowd gather around the restaurant, a suspicious crowd. At first, he thought it was an event, but then he noticed that a large number of people had cameras with them. It became clear that they were journalists. Let's go to another cafe, Ethan suggested. I like it here. We've been here. Let's go somewhere else. Why don't we go downtown for coffee? I have to go to practice soon, Christina said. Then we'll just sit here for another 20 minutes, and then I'll call a cab, and we'll go together. Okay then. Ethan watched intently as one of the journalists walked into the restaurants and sat down right in front of their table. The journalist recognized him. There was no doubt about it. He took a few pictures and typed something into his phone. Several other journalists followed him into the restaurant and sat down at the bar. Ethan pulled his hood up and turned away from them. You what? Christina was surprised. I'm cold. Are you serious? It's hot in here, and I'm cold. Let's get out of here. Ethan grabbed Christina's arm, but it was too late. Their table was surrounded. Ethan, is this your new wife? Asked a girl, holding a microphone out to his face. "No, I'm his girlfriend," answered Christina instead of the guy. "Do you have a relationship with him?" The reporter didn't let up, did she? "Why do you want to know?" "I'm from the Washington gossip column." "Ethan, how would you comment on your wedding and your affair with this girl?" "There was no wedding," Ethan muttered from under his hood. "We can prove that there was. We contacted your wife, Adriana, and she confirmed the wedding planning. She's lying about everything." Abruptly, the young man replied, "Ethan, are you married?" Christina was surprised. "Didn't you know?" The journalist readily told her all the details of the scandal. "He married his housekeeper last week. I wondered how it was possible that you didn't know about it. Are you still seeing him despite having a wife?" "I just didn't know that." Christina backed away. A crowd of journalists was advancing toward them, separating them farther and farther from the exit. "Ethan, can I have a comment? How did your parents feel about this marriage?" Someone in the crowd shouted. "You are cheating on Adriana a week after the wedding." Another journalist asked. Ethan pushed his way toward the exit, pushing people as hard as he could. He hopped into the first cab he could find and drove home. Christina was left alone in the cafe, surrounded by dozens of journalists. She felt humiliated, but immediately had a plan of action. She slowly sat down at a table, poured herself a full cup of tea, and addressed the journalists. "Ask any questions. I will tell you everything about Ethan and his family with cold confidence," she declared. In the evening, the father came home in a disgusting mood. At first, he didn't even want to tell what had happened, but then he gathered the whole family around the table and bitterly said, "It seems that I will soon lose my business." "What are you talking about?" Vanessa got worried. "Our profits have fallen to nearly zero." "Well, that's okay. We all go through tough times." His wife backed him up. "Remember, in the beginning, we worked at a loss. But then the company found new customers, and all was well that you compare. Back then, we were young and inexperienced. And now I've been in this business for over 20 years. Michael brushed it off. "What the hell happened?" "That's what it's all about." The father nodded his head at his son. "What did I do?" Ethan was indignant. "I decided to marry the housekeeper," mocking him, said his father. "Now they won't let me rest. It was just a joke." The guy tried to justify himself. "Well, because of your joke, we're about to move to a poor neighborhood. Is that what you wanted?" "No, of course not. I just wanted to tease Adriana a little bit and see how she reacted." "I did. Yeah. Well, was it worth it?" "Actually, it was fun." Inappropriately, Ethan laughed. "So now I'm in trouble for leaking it to the media. And when they took your picture with Christina in a cafe, there was a rumor that you were cheating on Adriana. As you understand, the public is not on our side on this issue. Just imagine how it looks in their eyes, a rich guy, the son of a lawyer with a dubious reputation. Why would he marry his housekeeper and cheat on her with the equally rich daughter of a realtor?" Michael told his son off. "Our clients are very protective of their reputations. They don't want their names mentioned next to mine. So everyone I had to defend in court refused my services. Christina and I just sat there. Believe me, that's enough for the press. I didn't tell them anything." So Christina told them. "She certainly wasn't happy about the news of your marriage," Vanessa said. "I told her it wasn't real. You just don't know women very well yet. I don't want to spoil anyone's appetite. But if you read the new article in the paper, which just came out today, you will find in it a sea of very unpleasant details about the life of our family." Vanessa put some additions on the table. "What is it?" Michael asked dolefully. "Someone told us how our son made a cruel joke about the housekeeper. There's a full-page article about it, with pictures." The woman turned to the right page of the paper. "I don't want to read it." Ethan turned away. "Is there any more about how we laundered money?" Vanessa opened another newspaper. Christina must have tried that. Maybe she heard something from her mother and decided to tell us for spite, Ethan suggested. "If it hadn't been for your stupid joke, none of this would have happened." Dad turned away and looked out the window. "We can say goodbye to my business. Today my partner said he was leaving our company. You've worked together all these 20 years. The wife got worried. He doesn't want to get his name dirty. What do we do now? We'll have to wait until this whole story subsides, Michael said. In the meantime, living on your salary and waiting a long time? Asked the wife. Experience tells me that about 5 years is nothing. My salary isn't enough to keep this house. That's how long Vanessa stated. I've already found us an apartment in town. But I don't want to move anywhere, Ethan objected. And no one is asking for your opinion. His father snapped at him. If we can't find a way out of this, we have to move. I'll think of something, he promised. Adriana was doing her job. She had already finished cleaning the windows in the living room. Ethan approached her with his head down. Hi, guiltily, he said, making up a new joke. Without looking at him, Adriana asked, I'm not falling for that anymore. I just wanted to see how well you knew. Now get out of here. Forgive me. I only now realized how awful I was. Ethan repented. I don't believe in your apologies, and I shouldn't. They are very sincere. You are a good girl. I have offended you for nothing. Can you forgive me? Okay, shrugged Adriana. She still wasn't in touch with any of the friends she'd had at her wedding. Only Betty, and she still had a good relationship. She made an effort every day to keep working and tried to think about how she could improve her personal life and her financial situation. Betty took her to a psychologist she knew, who helped Adriana understand that bemoaning her past would not build a good future. So after overcoming the humiliation she had endured, she decided to use those terrible emotions as fuel to improve her life. An apology from Ethan did nothing to change her attitude toward the young man. She'd realized all about him the moment he refused to marry, and now she was just wondering what he was going to say. Is that what you told the reporters about our wedding? Ethan asked. Oh, is that what you're worried about? I have to admit, for a few seconds I really thought you were remorseful, Adriana said. You can publish a retraction. Why should I? What if I asked you very nicely? The guy tried to put his arm around her shoulder, but she pulled away. Are you out of your mind? I told the whole truth. You proposed to me. We were getting ready to get married. Just tell them the wedding didn't happen. You want me to tell them how you made fun of me? Would that make people hate you even more? Adriana smiled. No, I want you to tell me it was a joke. And no wedding was planned. Tell me we had a wedding-style party. Or what? We just wanted to have a photo shoot. Why would I lie? I'll pay you very well. Ethan showed her some dollar bills, came up with the money. That's more interesting now. I don't even know how much I can value my humiliation. Adriana pretended to calculate the amount of compensation in her mind. Stop it. You're making fun of me. My parents made me come to you. Do you really think I would voluntarily fawn over you? It doesn't even smell like sincerity. Then here's the deal. Get me an apartment downtown for a year and give me 6 months' salary in advance. Then I'll be willing to make concessions. We were counting on a much smaller amount, Ethan said. I hear your father's business is in jeopardy. It is. Isn't he willing to give me a good sum to save it? She asked. I agree. Michael, all this time with his wife, overheard the conversation outside the door. If for that amount of money you agree to write a retraction, so be it. It was a deal. The very next day, she moved into a big apartment in downtown Washington. She had a full 6 months to find a new job, and she decided to spend some of the money on education. After the whole story, her name became famous. The media were willing to pay money for interviews, but she decided to take a different route and started studying to become a journalist. 6 months later, she was hired as an intern at a prestigious institution. The salary wasn't much, but the outlook was excellent, and Adriana had to break the vow she had made to her friend. After all, she was no longer looking for a rich husband. Now she was looking for a good job for herself.